Zack Snyder's second installment of his space action epic is now on Netflix. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. It continues to follow Kora and the warriors who fight against the oppressive Motherworld. Now, the first movie had some fun moments with an exciting climax. Does this second film surpass the first? Kora and the surviving warriors prepare to sacrifice everything, fighting alongside the brave people of Veldt to defend a once peaceful village. On the eve of their battle, the warriors must face the truths of their own pasts, each revealing why they fight. As the full force of the realm bears down on the burgeoning rebellion, unbreakable bonds are forged, heroes emerge, and legends are made. Alright, so this picks up just about where Part 1 leaves off. We have Sofia Boutella as Kora, Michelle Huisman as Gunnar, Jimon Hansu as Titus, Bayduna returning as Nemesis, Elise Duffy as Milius, and Stas Nair as Tarak, all just there to join the fray. Now, after watching this, I could only think about how closely it resembles Antoine Fuqua's 2016 Western remake, The Magnificent Seven. We have a group of baddies who are coming to a town in a prescribed amount of time, so then the townspeople and their ragtag band of fighters work to instill confidence, train the people, and then ready the setting for an all-out battle. And then, the night before the fight, we get moments where the characters provide insight into who they are, sort of like opening their souls before their potential demise. And then on the day, when the fighting commences, there are unexpected traps and schemes as the residents look to catch their attackers off guard and hopefully defeat the coming onslaught. I mean, seriously, there are so many similarities between Rebel Moon Part 2 and The Magnificent Seven. Now, I don't really see that as a negative because I love Fuqua's movie, so framing this sci-fi as a space western totally worked. Story's patient and it's drawn out with a lot of training and collaborating montages. And there's sweeping music that builds in intensity while also stirring emotions. And then when the fighting begins, the showdown happens from many different angles and vantage points, and it not only adds tension, but there becomes a sort of stressful pressing of time. All the characters, regardless of side, begin to feel the pressure, driving up their desire to stay alive. Now for this, there are some really great looking special effects. When the melee happens, we get a lot of lasers flying through the air. Some of the attention to detail I thought was impressive. I mean, a few times I watched the lasers ricochet off of a hard surface, changing its trajectory. And it didn't happen often, but I don't remember ever seeing anything like that before, at least in how laser fire behaves. Now, the scale of the ships I thought was wonderful also. They're big and bulking, some spewing smoke to get them a struggling, almost run-down effect. But then there's also the monster-sized craft, and those are both imposing from the outside and the inside. Several scenes give us a good perspective and its sense of size, building out environments that a character could really just get lost in, which then adds to some excitement and maybe even stress. There are a few times when the ships are shown in outer space and not within an atmosphere. Now here, while they do look great, they're almost too polished. They're lacking any sort of wear or damage that's visible once they enter an airspace. And I don't think this is really something to get hung up on, but it did stand out to me. Now, something I appreciate within the story for Part 2 is that there is an extended scene that works to build character depth and background. This also happens incrementally throughout the narrative, but the one part in particular that I'm referencing, it was a dedicated time to stop down and focus on building out our characters. When I say stop down, it didn't kill the pace of the story. I mean, it was a natural point for the characters to share, so it did fit, and it didn't come across as a forced scene. Now, I still think there's more opportunity for expansion on the development of the few of the players, but I was certainly impressed at how much development we get on Kora and Titus. I mean, they no longer felt like strangers or unemotional warriors. They now have anima, a soul that can be troubled, damned, or even redeemed. And the action for the film is excellent. When the fighting kicks into gear, it then becomes a massive display of explosions, shootings, and loss of limbs. And we get a great scene with Bayduna's nemesis. She wields her lightsaber-like swords with menacing finesse, and how she maneuvers them through the air and her opponents, it's beautiful and flowing. I like, too, that those swords, they get a tiny bit more prominence in this movie. Not just seen as some cool cameo of weaponry, but one that serves multiple story purposes. Now, the runtime for this is kind of short for an average Snyder movie. That's not good or bad, it's just an observation. It's 2 hours, and aside from the deliberate slower pace of a Western, this is steady, and it doesn't drag with the storytelling. Now, I do think the film ends up being longer than it needs to be, though, and that's really because, once again, we are shown a ton of slow-mo shots. Now, some of these are included right at the right times, and those work to accentuate movement or action. Other times, though, it feels more like an artistic choice, but it's one that I didn't need. Like when we watch some of the residents cutting down and then threshing the wheat, sure, if you want to show a moment where the scythe is cutting through the shafts in slow-mo, hey, fine, it can look cool. But when that's repeated over and over, that's when it feels tedious. And I loved it when big action moments would happen and the slow-mo allowed us to see a character maybe flying through the air or reacting to something in their environment before the speed picks back up and we watch them tumble at full speed. I mean, that's fun. But again, only when used sparingly and effectively. Now, I had fun with this, especially when viewing it as an interpretation of the Magnificent Seven. The characters are given depth and purpose, banding together not as strangers to us, but as heroes we can root for. The choreography and special effects enhance the energy of the furious battles, capturing excitement, danger, and suspense. There's an over-reliance on slow motion, and some characters could have more development, but the core story of unlikely heroes taking on oppressive invaders, it's engaging and enjoyable. There's no sex or nudity, little profanity, and then a ton of violence. I give Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, 3.5 out of 5 couches. So you're a fan of space westerns? And if you are, which ones do you like to watch? Cowboy Bebop is an excellent series. The anime, not the live action. But let me know what you like in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.